Welcome to the Health and Wealth Power Hour, the podcast that provides you with the knowledge and insights you need to achieve physical, mental, and financial well-being. I'm your host, Harlon Pickett, a business consultant who's passionate about helping people achieve a more balanced and healthier life. Each week, we'll deep dive into topics related to health and wealth, including retirement income planning, innovative healthcare solutions, alternative funded health plans, and specific actions individuals and business owners can take to gain control of their finances, have access to affordable quality health care, and achieve peace of mind. We'll also be joined by innovative experts who will share their knowledge and insights on prevalent topics. So, whether you're looking to grow your wealth or improve your health, you've come to the right place. Get ready to be informed, inspired, and empowered. Let's get started. Well, hello there. It must be time for another exciting episode of the Health and Wealth Power Hour. I am Harlon Pickett, your host. Thanks so much for being with us today. We got a very, very interesting and hopefully entertaining episode for you today. We're going to talk about money. Money. Everyone likes to talk about money, and you never seem to have enough because, as the old saying goes, the more you earn, the more you spend, and building that generational wealth that so many people are trying to do or attempting to do or hopefully, that's their plan, seems to just slide between your fingers like sand. And many times you don't understand why that is happening. Well, we're going to talk to a financial guru today that's going to help you better understand some of the very simplistic mistakes that you could be making, but really help you set up yourself for success in building wealth. Timothy Clifford, welcome aboard the Health and Wealth Power Hour, sir. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Harlon. I'm looking forward today.
Man, I was really excited whenever you reached out to me because right off the bat, what struck me as something that I think so many people can relate to is the little tagline you have saying, making money does not equal having money. And I believe a lot of people can relate to that because there are a lot of people out there that make a lot of money and they ain't got no money. They don't know what happened to it. They're making bad decisions. Sometimes they're making snap decisions. Sometimes they feel like, or maybe they even are making a decent investment or even a good investment, but they never seem to recover what they're hoping to build that generational wealth. So I'm super excited about talking to you today and really digging into this because I know I've certainly made some of those same mistakes. We all live and learn. Some of us just live and we never learn. So I'm hoping that we can get a little bit more information out there so people get ready to take some notes because you are in for a treat today. Before we dive too far into that though, Tim, you have such an interesting origin story because not too many people can say they started on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile as a runner. To talk a little bit about how that experience and then even moving up to trader and such really sets you up for what you're doing now.
So it is this continuous story because it all goes back to kind of most people. I grew up with no money, right? So one of my major goals was to make money and to build wealth. I mean, from the time I was in high school, that was a major kind of goal. And that's not everyone's. In fact, I was too much for a lot of people, but that was mine. So I finished my associate's degree. I was interested. I was 20 years old. So I'm going to a 2-year degree. I didn't do a 4-year. And I'm thinking that's too long when you're 20. Those of you who can remember those days, 2 and 4 years is a long time. Now we know it's a short time. But back then it was a long time. So I went to a 2-year school. When I got out of 2-year school, I went and applied at Purdue. I lived in the Midwest and to finish my 4-year degree. But during that summer, I'm like, now how is this going to help me go build wealth or make money? Well, I was 3 hours from Chicago. So I'm like, well, and I had some connections and some people that worked on the floor of the Mercantile Exchange. So I'm like, well, you don't need a college degree that's not going to help me do anything with my with my number one goal, building wealth. So I'm like, well, maybe I should just go to Chicago and turn into a trader, because that was how people found that wealth early on, and fast, rich wealth, right? So I did that. Now, for those of you who have ever tried day trading, or those of you who have actually worked on the exchanges or been around, you know that there is this, like, I call it a God gene. There is a gene. There's a trading gene that we get, where a few people can actually do short-term trading, but it's very few. And when I say very few, I mean it's 2 in 1,000, 3 in 1,000, 4 in 1,000. I've met those people, but they're very rare. And they don't hide what they do because they don't know how and what they do. So I had a really good friend who was one of the best traders in the world. And I'm just like, why are you buying and I'm selling? I don't see what you're seeing. And he would try to explain it to me. And for his life, for my life, I couldn't grasp it. It was just, I saw things differently. So anyways, the reason I tell that story is I spent 10 years on the floor as a runner, a phone person, an R person, trading, and then going into trading. And that 10 years, I made a lot of money. I lost a lot of money, but I got into my late 20s, and I was like, you know what? This isn't going to work, because I'm not building any wealth. You know what I mean? So making money, and this is kind of where I got that statement. Kind of making money doesn't mean having money. It just means you're making money, and that was kind of my first aha. And then that moved me into, back then we were stockbrokers. We weren't financial planners. Those of you who were my age in the 60s, in the 90s, there were very few financial planners. Most of us were just stockbrokers. But see, stocks had a different flavor to them, because you could invest and be right as long as you had time. Where commodities, you had to be not only right, but you had to be right in that day or that 2 days, right? But in stocks, you could go buy Occidental Petroleum, Coca-Cola, and yeah, it might go down, but as long as you had the money to hold on to it, over time, it would go up, right? So it was a different way of investing and strategizing. So that's kind of what moved me to the stock business. And then kind of lastly, from a career perspective, I went from there to Charles Schwab and Company. And in Indianapolis, I was at the branch, and my aha was literally about 3 or 4 years after I'd started at Schwab. I worked with lots of people who made a lot of money, who had a lot of money, et cetera. But one of the things that I started to notice, and then once I noticed it, I really started to dig in on it, was people who have money make different decisions than people who make money. And they're actually very minor differences. In fact, a normal person wouldn't really see it. But they're different in the sense of over a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades. It's the difference of someone with $2 or $3 million and someone with a couple $100,000. It's not a single decision. It's the accumulation of those decisions and how they think about making decisions. So that's my kind of career quick story of kind of how I got to where into the financial services business. And then I've just spent the last, 20 years kind of doing investing, but I'm mostly long-term. I wouldn't call I'm definitely not a trader. I did do it for 10 years, but I definitely do more long-term investing now.
But the reason for that is because of the lessons that you learned on the other.
No, that's absolutely right. I learned, I just was not a good, and most people are not. I mean, like, which we can get into kind of the difference between when we get into kind of the book and talk a little bit about seeking counsel. Most people think, okay, well, I'm going to go get information or take a trading class on YouTube because this guy knows how to trade. And I'm like, that guy doesn't know how to trade, or he wouldn't be teaching a class on YouTube.
That's a great point.
So take everything from a perspective of, what's realistic here, and again, people are grasping for, well, what should I do, right? And it's just like, no, that's probably not going to work.
Well, you mentioned the book, and the book's called Plan Assist. And it's, as we had kind of discussed a little before we started the show, it is a 30,000-foot view of how to better plan for financial wealth, long-term financial wealth. So let's jump into that. Well, I mean, that's
Okay.
That's what the folks are here for, right? The folks are here
Right.
to not be teased about it, but to hear some of this. Hearing your story and how you got there, that's going to help people understand the foundation of how you started learning some of these things, and that you're not just a guy on YouTube teaching somebody how to trade, right? You're like, oh,
Exactly. That's perfect. That's right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
because you do have the background of you saw this and you said, okay, this does work for some people. But as you mentioned, they're very, very few and far between. So real life folks like, me and you, how do we do this? And that's what the book is all about. So let's jump into that and give folks some meat that they can chew on.
Okay. So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to come back down in just a second and kind of put it how did it come about. But the book is about 3 things. People who have money do these 3 things over and over again, even if they don't call them this, or if they don't even consciously know they do it. Almost everyone with not almost. It's pretty much everyone. I just have to, from a compliance, say almost everyone. But I have not met someone with money that doesn't do this. They all have a plan. They're always diversified, meaning they're not all their money's in one place. And they all seek counsel naturally. When you say those 3 things, what I came across was the first 2 are somewhat objective, right? So, and when I say a plan, I'm not talking about some 40-page PDF document that you go and pay $2,000 with a financial planner, put it in your drawer and don't do anything with it, right? I'm talking about it could be as simple as a 1-page document where it clearly defines, here's where I am. I have this much debt. I make this much money. We spend this much. Here's where we're at. Where do we want to go? I.e., this is the there, kind of a here-there strategy. And then, okay, how are we going to get there, and come up with 2 or 3 strategies in the middle? It could be as simple as that all the way to a full-blown plan. So it's probably some combination, but I don't want to over-exaggerate the plan. And depending on how much money, how complicated your financial life will kind of dictate how complicated that plan gets. But no matter how complicated it gets, it still needs to be relatively simple and easy to explain, not only to you, but to your significant other. Okay. So
yeah, if it's so complicated that you can't even remember what your plan is.
Forget it.
Purpose, right?
No, that's right. And worse is you totally know what it is, but your significant other has no idea what it is. Well, then how are you guys going to get on the same page and talk through it? And sometimes it's the husband, sometimes it's the wife, but it's interesting. Okay. So that's first. The second is diversification, which I'll kind of get into, but it's that make sure that you don't have all your money in one bucket, but that's more kind of art than science, which we can touch on. But for the most part, if you sit down with 10 financial advisors, that having a plan and being diversified, for the most part, will be very similar, okay? I mean, there'll be a little difference in the prioritization from advisor to advisor. Like one advisor will say, I think you need to do this first. Another advisor say, do this. But even in the diversification, there'll be a little differences, but it's not going to be the difference because we all get trained the same way. It's not going to be a massive difference. It might be tweaking the order that you do things in. Okay. So that's the first 2. The third one is the seeking counsel. Okay. Now that one is the one that I find the most difficult. And I'll kind of get into that because I think there's really, I've tried to do this over and over with that. There's 3 kinds of clients in the financial service. In reality, there's 5. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of take it through so you get a sense of, well, am I in that bucket? And if you hear me say I'm that person, then this probably really makes sense. If you're one of the other 4, you're probably not. Okay. The other 3, because 2 of them apply. The first group is people who have no money, right? And have no income, right? I mean, there's a group of people that fall into that, right? And that group makes sense. Second group makes money, but has 0 money. That's Dave Ramsey, right? I mean, I have a lot of debt. I have I'm making some money. I need to get out of debt. I have my student loan. That's number two, right? Nothing wrong with that. Fantastic group of people, right? But there are some solutions. There's some companies that are built around that segment of client, right? The third segment of client is the group that almost no one talks to, and that's the group that makes money, has a decent income. Okay, husband works, but has a decent income. They actually have some money, right? They have money in a 401k, they have money in a house. Okay, so and they're living within their means. That group is really who this is for, but there's very few plans for them, which I'll kind of touch on. Okay, so that's the third group. The fourth group is the people who both have money and make money, right? That's the group I built my whole career on, right? So if you talk to a financial advisor or anyone that's done finance, that fourth group is the group that people like me, I have 50 households that I serve today that fall into that fourth group. That they'll have money, they'll make money. So that group. The fifth group kind of is like the first group. I was always trying to explain this, but the fifth group is kind of your trust fund baby, right? It's those friends we know that have tons of money. They don't really make money. They don't even have to make money, right? It makes no difference, right? They make money. So if you kind of scale it down to that first, kind of that third group and that fourth group, the group that I came across that I found was an aha. So it was it was the third group that I kind of am talking to when I built this Plan Assist. Is I was doing one of those church financial plan programs. It was a 12-week course, and they picked financial advisors that we all taught. We didn't teach the whole thing. It wasn't a Ramsey course. It was, kind of a 12-week course. And I was in charge of 2 of the 12 weeks. And Harlan, it was so fascinating to me. I mean, like the 1 week I went, there was 5 couples there. And when you met these couples, you're just like, these people are very responsible. They're saving money. They got a good income. They're living within their means. This is a fantastic, very, very good group, right? But then it was almost at the same time my heart was broken because I'm like, they're never going to meet someone like me. And the reason I say that is because they have no money outside their 401k. So financial advisors like myself, we make money investing people's money, right? So if someone has $500,000 in their 401k and a $300,000 house, and they make $100,000 a year, well, there's no real money to sit down with a financial advisor like myself. So the question was, then how do we service that group? And then what is it that group needs? So I know that's a very long answer, but that kind of sets up the rest of the call, because now you got a sense of, okay, who's this for? And then why is this?
No, but what you're talking about is so common. You're right. That's the largest group, right? Let's be honest. That is the largest.
That is.
Of folks out there. But that is always the way it is, no matter what industry it seems like. That largest group is a lot of times the most difficult to deal with, to find, to get them to understand. Sometimes they even need help, and they need that diversification, right? I mean, let's go back to, and I know it's happened more recently, but the one that impacted me the most was in 2008 when we saw the huge losses in 401ks. And the reason why it impacted me so much is because I was, not as a financial advisor, but I was helping federal employees in particular into retirement during that time, during the 2008, 2009, 2010 time. And they don't have a 401k, they have what's called a TSP, which is basically the same thing that government employees have. But no one did anything else. Nothing. That's all they had. And so when there was an extreme drop and no one there to advise them, remember, no one's even talking to them. They don't even know where their funds are at. And they're still in highly volatile funds within, 1 or 2 years of these people getting ready to retire. And all of a sudden, 50% of their money is gone.
Yes, you got it. That was my aha. What you described, and by the way, though it just occurred to me with this 6 couples at church, but once I saw it, I hadn't seen it up until then. So this was about 4 years ago. But once I saw it, it's like when you buy a Toyota, you see Toyotas everywhere. When you buy a Ford, you see them everywhere, right? So once I saw it, I'm like, well, these people are everywhere.
Yeah.
But remember, my world was the fourth group, right? My whole world's built on people who have money and make money, right? But I'm like, well, what about all these people that do have some money and are making money? So they're not Dave Ramsey. It doesn't make any sense for them. They they go to a Ramsey course, like, whatever. I don't have any debt. Makes no sense to them.
Yeah. Or they have such a minimal amount, it doesn't fit into that program, right?
That's right.
They may have a debt because they have a mortgage. They may have some debt because they have a car.
Exactly.
Whatever. But they don't have $60,000, $80,000 in credit card debt. They don't have a bunch of personal loans. They're not.
That's exactly right.
Check loans all the time, and that they're constantly paying 132% interest. They're not in that world.
That's right.
The regular loans that people may have just to live their lives, because no one's got these days $600,000 for a new house, right? So you've got to have this. They've got money, but they don't have enough money to go pay cash for everything.
That's exactly right, and it's very managed debt is the best way to describe it. It's they can afford it. It's not controlling their lives. It's not having relationship. It's not causing relationship problems. All that stuff.
Right. I said budgeted debt. It's budgeted.
Yeah,
this fits our budget. We don't buy it unless it fits in our budget.
That's the perfect word.
Typically make the minimum payment. We typically make more than the minimum payment, because if they said it's going to take 5 years to pay off my truck, I want to get that paid off in 3.5 and 4.
Yep.
And whatever.
That's exactly right.
And so that's a great mentality, but what it doesn't do is build wealth, right? It's not build.
That's right. That's correct. You end up, if you don't kind of take some of the stuff we're going to talk about here later in the call and take seriously building wealth, you end up spending 20 years like those people you talked to in 2008, where they'll end up with $500,000, $600,000, $1 million in some kind of a retirement account, but there's really no money outside of those accounts, right? Because they really didn't build wealth. They built a job for retirement. They built an income stream for retirement, but they didn't build wealth. That's different.
Right. But some of those, though, too, this is what I saw in particular, is all of a sudden they couldn't even retire now.
That's right.
But they didn't have, because the very big potential to outlive their money was there. And that, we hear that now, but I mean, if they're living longer, $dollar, what are we going to do? Right? What happens when all of a sudden you're living longer, but you have not financially planned on living longer? Well, if you haven't set yourself up for that and you do not have generational wealth,
that's right. That's a definite. Perfect.
Yep. All right, so let's take a little bit deeper dive into this, because these are the foundations. Is you got to you got to make sure that you're diversifying, as you mentioned, right? And then you also want to make sure that you're seeking counsel. And then, as you said, it starts with a plan. It can be a 1-page plan. It can be a 4-page plan. The plan has to be simple enough for you to understand it. I want to start with that first. How often do you see the complication or the detail, the extreme detail of a plan that absolutely is the beginning of the end? In other words, I've got this plan. It's so detailed. I'm lost in it. I couldn't keep up with it. I just gave it.
It happens all the time. I don't see it a lot because it's that engineer, it's that person who's really smart that's done it, and then they don't ever get to the seek counsel. So I bump into people periodically that'll do it, or that'll flippantly say it if you're talking to them. But most people don't admit to it, right? They overplan and then they just throw it out the window, right? Because most people either overplan, but the majority of people then don't plan. Probably what I see the most, and I'll start shortening up my answers, and then you can dig into them. But what I see more likely than that is when you build a house, when you build an extension onto your house, the first thing we do is get an architect. Well, that's a fun conversation, right? I mean, we get it. How big's the room going to be? What's the ceiling height and all that kind of stuff. The painful part becomes when that engineer shows up, right? And that engineer says, "Oh, by the way, you can't make the height this, or what you can't. You got to make the windows this, or something like that, right?" You'll always end up there. But that engineer is what he or she is doing is connecting dots. Right. So that's kind of what you're doing with a plan. Not kind of. That's what you're doing with the plan. When you say I'm going to put 10% in a 401k, that's fine. And that individual decision is a great one. It's kind of the architect decision, right? It feels and looks great. But then how does that connect to other parts of your financial plan? And that's what a plan's designed to do. So think of it more like for those of you who have built a house, that CAD system, it's taking those little decisions and connecting them to each other and to those other big decisions, and making sure that you're making decisions in a good both priority. So you're putting them in the right order. Okay. And second, you're putting a sense of urgency on what you need to put a sense of urgency on, right? So I mean, and the combination of those, that's really what a plan does.
Okay. So let's talk about all of these wound up together too, because I'm sitting here listening to you talk about plan and talking about these different pieces. But if I put together the plan, but I haven't got any professional guidance yet, the plan I'm going to put together is going to be based on whatever knowledge that I have or whatever knowledge I've gained by looking online at different things, right? So that is just,
that's right.
That's what that's going to look like. And even if I already have the concept of maybe I want to diversify, that diversification, whatever that looks like, is also going to be based on that same knowledge, but not any individual counsel that I have received. So when you're listing these things as planning, diversification, and seek counsel, is that the proper order? Is the first order seek counsel?
It's I've never had it. That's a really good question. I've never had that question asked. But I'd probably say it's still the plan starts with kind of where am I at and where do I want to go, right? So I think it kind of starts with that strategy. But to your point, if you just put it together without any input, you're still probably better off than no plan at all. The problem is the order. Someone like me will sit down. That's why. Actually, I think we should do something. We should actually come back to seek counsel, because this is going to answer the plan question. So, and this comes to exactly your point. Which order do you do it in? Is one of the challenges we have when we seek counsel is, especially those of us who are successful. Remember, 80% of millionaires in America are self-made. 80%. That means they went from 0 to 80% in their lifetime. Okay. That means most people are pretty smart, right? I mean, so this isn't, I mean, I've sat down with people who've never had a financial advisor in their lives, and they're still really good, right? I mean, they have a pretty good sense of kind of what they need to do and responsible, et cetera. But that exact group is absolutely horrific at seeking counsel because they haven't been taught how to seek counsel, right? Their egos get in the way. Their pride gets in their way. I can go do research. I don't need to ask questions, right? I can go get this answer. Or the other end of the spectrum, they've sat down with some bad experiences where someone on the other side just selling them stuff, right? You're not giving me counsel, you're just selling me something, right? So then you end up with this. When you put your plan together, you don't really want to seek counsel because you're like, some guy's just going to sell me something, or some woman, but I'm not doing it. Right? How many times has that happened to you and I in anything, right? Buying a car.
Let me go to email right now. I mean, literally, let me go to my email, right. Go to my LinkedIn, and right now, someone is trying to sit down with me to talk to me about my finance. I promise you, right now, that I have read messages, unopened emails that are in there right now. And the question, though, to me then is, but why? What sets you apart? Why would you sending me an email make me say, oh, this is the guy I want to talk to, right? But this is the problem, like you're talking about. When someone is successful or someone thinks you're successful, they come after you, but it's always in a salesman type. They come across so salesy that you don't want to. They may even have the greatest advice. They may have the exact advice that you need, the exact perfect advice for you. But because of the way they came across or the way that they engaged with you,
then
there's no chance.
You got it. That's exactly what happens. That's what happens to all of us, right? I mean, because of the way they come at it, because of their personalities, because of da. But here's the deal. So here's what happens with the seek advice. And so I loved the order because I never thought about it like this. But when you're seeking advice, I'm going to give you all of us have those trust fund friends, right? They might not be trust fund babies, but they have too much money, right? And they're definitely inheriting money, et cetera. We all have those kids, right? We all have those friends. Okay, now, here's what's crazy, Harlan, is and once I say this, you're going to call me in a year and say, holy Moses, I can't believe that I have seen this over and over again. What happens to those of us who make money? Okay. And this is my opinion. So you're not going to read this on some internet. So you take it for that, just an opinion or an observation, right? But it's an observation based on experience, like Rush used to say. So what happens to people like us is we think what we know matters. Okay. So because we're successful, right? We've accumulated wealth, we've accumulated success. So what we know is very important. What we think we know is very important. So when we tell our kids, we want to teach our kids what we know, right? I want to teach my kids how to invest because I'm a good investor. I can teach her how to invest. I want to teach her how to do investments, how to do finances, etc. What I know. So that's because I've made all my money in my lifetime, and what I know I think matters, right? So I'm constantly wanting to teach people what I know. And even when I talk to people, I have to catch myself on it because that's part of the I did it myself kind of mentality. That's the whole American story, right? But here's the catch. The 20% of people who have money and grew up with money, right? They don't do that. They don't even come close. And primarily the reason is they don't know anything, right? They didn't, I'm not taking anything away from them, right? They really don't know anything. They have $2-3 million, but they didn't make it. They inherited it, right? So they know the ones that take that wealth and grow it to the next level, they know they don't know. So they don't even pretend to know, right? So if you talk to those people, they're not constantly telling you what they know. They're constantly telling you, or they don't even tell you anything because first of all, they know you don't care. And second of all is when they make decisions, watch how they make decisions and how many times they seek counsel. And counsel comes in two forms, informal and formal. Okay. So informal means you just get really good at asking bunches of questions, and it's your friend, it's your neighbor, it's YouTube, it's us. This is informal because we're not making specific advice, right? But people with money, they are really good at taking lots of advice, and they don't feel obligated to do anything with it. Or see, like you and I, when we're a salesperson, we think we have to do something with it. They'll take 20 pieces of advice and do nothing with it. But they get over time, they get so good at collecting so much information that then they decipher that information and start making better financial decisions because they get good at getting input.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You said it that way too, because there has been plenty of times that I have received advice and I wanted to do it right away, but I thought better of it. Sometimes I did it right away, I shouldn't have, but I think I've learned the lesson to not always do that, right? Sometimes you have to just I like this. I think it's a great idea, and it's just not today. It's not a good idea for me today. And being able to stop yourself from jumping into some things whenever it's not the right time can be very difficult, especially for some of the easiest people to sell. I mean, we really are. If it sounds like a good idea, What's stopping me from doing it?
That's right.
My wife mostly, but
yeah, but it goes to our personalities, right? We're type A. That's what's made us successful. I mean, it's a lot of kind of the makeup of why we're here. I'll give you the very best story ever, and this is not. I'm not making a political story, but it's such a good story. I'm going to use it. Okay, so even those on the left, please just disregard the politics of it. So Ivanka Trump did an interview with Lex Friedman. Have you ever watched Friedman's podcast? Okay. So did you happen to see Ivanka?
I did not know. And I've probably never listened to the whole thing. I've listened to snippets of it.
Me too. Because it's like a 2-hour interview, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, same thing. So anyways, Lex, this is the craziest story ever. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, who does that? So, and this was just a couple of weeks ago. This wasn't like, this was a month ago. This is not like this was after I read the book and all that kind of stuff. It's back to that. Once you've noticed it, you see it everywhere. So Lex looks at Ivanka and says, what's the number one thing you learned from your dad? Okay. Now remember, this is a 2-hour podcast. She's not in a hurry to answer any questions, or she can say whatever she wants and expand on it, etc. And she looks at Lex with almost no house and says, it's be curious. And he goes, what do you mean be curious? And she goes, I need to ask lots of questions, which is a form of informal advice, right? Informal consult, whatever you want to call it, right? So again, they use different words, but that's what they get. And he goes, well, give me an example. And she goes, okay. She goes, my first big project was in charge of the post office that Trump bought downtown Manhattan and converted it into a multi kind of real estate. So it was a combination of an apartments, hotel, and retail space. Okay. In the middle of this old post office was this massive atrium. And she said, we were really struggling with the air-conditioned heating system of this atrium because we wanted to make sure that it was 70 degrees all the time, right? So if it was 100 degrees outside, we wanted it 70 degrees. If it was 0 outside, we wanted it 70 degrees, right? So we're like, well, we were really struggling with how do you build this atrium in a way that accomplishes that, okay? And she goes, we were about halfway through it. We committed to a project. We were spending millions and millions of dollars, but we all knew it was a major risk, a huge problem, and we were spending enormous amounts of money on this one problem that we had, right? And she goes, and Trump shows up, and he goes, she goes, and of course he wants to walk around the complex, right? So she goes, he starts walking around the complex, and all of a sudden he starts talking to the heating and air guys. They're putting the dock up, Harlan, duct work up, right? He starts talking to those guys. And she's like, what? And he goes over and he says, what do you think of the new heating and air conditioning thing? And she goes, the first couple guys, would make a comment. She goes, wasn't any value. She got to the fourth or fifth guy. And he looks at him and he goes, can I be honest? And Trump says, well, you have to be honest, because remember, Trump's born rich, so he doesn't care about any advice people get. He'll take whatever he gets and do whatever he wants with it, right? So he doesn't feel obligated, so he doesn't really care, right? That's literally his opinion, right? And so the guy goes, okay. He goes, you're way over engineering it. He goes, you're spending way too much money. You're trying to accomplish something that's only going to happen 1 or 2% of the time. It rarely is 100 degrees in New York. It's rarely 0 in New York. What you're trying to do, and you're spending all this money to keep it. He goes, if it's 100 degrees and it's 75 degrees in here, or if it's 0 and it's 65, no one's going to notice. You're overspending and over engineering. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure it's going to work. And Ivanka laughed there, and she goes, she said, that was my aha moment for, you know what? I can't just listen to these people in the $5,000 suits. I need to listen to everybody. And then I'll learn, once I've done it enough times, to decipher what makes sense for what I'm trying to do. So that's the perfect example, in my opinion, of a kind of a informal advice model that people like us have a hard time with. And I'm saying that personally because I do too, right? That's not something like, I would never do that. Not naturally. I might.
And I get that because, I told you a little bit about my story of how I was a traditional insurance broker for years and years and years until all of a sudden I saw problems. Well, the problems that I saw weren't brought to me by any of the companies, say, that I work with now. They were brought to me by the people that were experiencing. So if I wasn't listening to the folks that were actually having the issues and experience the things and saying and asking for something different,
you never got something different. That's exactly right. Because the executives were just saying, go sell this, sell this, sell this. Here's why. Where all of a sudden you're like, no, there's a problem. And how do we solve that? Well, that's not solved through some salesperson.
No, it's not. But what you're saying was exactly right, because when I would bring this problem to, in this case, insurance companies, they were like, well, that's just an anomaly. That's, just keep on doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job. But wait, people are suffering. I'm not doing a good job. I know I can't.
That's right.
Listening to me. Right.
It's amazing.
Money, buddy. You're doing a great job. Keep money. What? That's what you got into this for, right? No, I didn't get into this for that. I got in to help people, and I thought that's what I was doing. And then I wasn't anymore, and I don't understand what's happening.
That's awesome. That's you're right. I'm telling you, to your point, if we help enough people, the money will automatically come with it. We don't need to be, I'm going to sell this and make $5,000. Or I'm going to make $2,000. I'm going to make $500. It's more, if we solve enough problems, we're going to be, every person listening to this is going to be fine.
Solve enough problems. That's really what you're at, right? Be a solution.
That's right.
You are a solution provider and not a salesperson. It changes the whole dynamic of who and what you are.
And then to put a bow on that, kind of getting counsel from that group of people. The other thing that group does is, so then you say, okay, well, what is it those people that kind of inherit money naturally do? The thing they do, they don't call it counsel. What they do is they learn to hire and fire people from the time they're little kids. And if you watch them, they know how to hire and fire mechanics, CPAs, house cleaning people doing windows. Doesn't matter, right? That's what they teach their kids is how to hire and fire people, which is, again, another form of how to get counsel.
So, do you receive counsel? I'm gonna go back to this because I'm tying this together with something else. You talked about doing this class at church with group number 3, as you call them, people that are making money, people that are saving money, but not in a way that would provide generational wealth. So in essence, because of going into this class to provide counsel, you also receive counsel in that situation because it opened to your eyes to another group of people that you really hadn't had a lot of interaction with, but then it changed your perspective as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. That's a definite summary of what happened. And I literally walked out of there and came up with the name Plan Assist 48 hours later. I mean, literally the next day I started working on it. I was like CFP Assist and all this other stuff. And so literally I came out and I said, I got to figure out how to help that. How do I come to that? And then that was 4 years ago. So it's been a long journey to this little 40-page booklet. But the 40-page booklet summarizes and of that 30,000 foot, okay, then how, where do you start when you have a plan? And then I kind of lay out a nice, simple kind of all the way from complexity to, and then what's diversification look like? Well, it's not, diversification is diversified not only across just investment assets, because that's what everyone thinks. You can go onto the Google and search and say, okay, well, how should I have my money? This much in U.S., international, et cetera. So all that and that's true. But again, people with wealth, they're diversified across tax, liability. So they'll have tax-free, taxable, tax-free, tax-deferred, right? So they'll have 401ks, Roths, and then they'll have the regular. And then they're also diversified, and this goes to the people you helped in 2008, people that build generational wealth, they'll be diversified across income. So when they get into retirement, they might have a counseling, just a consultant gig. They might still do some insurance business, but they'll have multiple streams of income, sometimes 3, 4, 5 streams of income. And some of it might just be 10 grand, but 10 grand here, 5 grand there, 20 grand there. That makes their life and their retirement so much more predictable.
And that's the big piece, right? What you just said, that keyword predictable. The unpredictability of retirement is typically what keeps people from retiring, right? I don't know where my money is going to come from. I could outlive it. I don't have any guarantee of income past, say, maybe Social Security. I don't have any of these things. I'll just wait. I read an article the other day. In fact, I did a little story on it as well, a little video on this particular thing. And the Equitable did a study of 1,000 consumers out there, asking them if they still wanted to retire at 65. Overwhelmingly, yes. I want to retire at 65. But 47% said, but I won't. It'll probably be 74. So the whole point of my little video is 74 the new 65, right? Because that's kind of the little joke. Everyone says, 40's the new 30, 50's the new, all that kind of stuff. So is 74 the new 65. But it's that group of people right into that group of 3. That's who this is, because they've done nothing else in most cases. They are not necessarily going to have guaranteed income, even though they may have worked for 30 or 40 years.
That's right. You got it. That's exactly right. That is the group. And I've never seen any stats of how big that group is, but that group's much bigger than I would have thought. I mean, it's a lot of people that fall in that group. They're very responsible. They're living within their budget. They're saving money in their 401k. They kind of look like they live in a decent neighborhood. They live in a good neighborhood, but they're not building wealth.
And I'll tell you, the folks that I sat down with for the years that I was working with that particular organization, and I still have some ties to that organization as well, helping the folks out with Medicare and such, so they refer to me at times. But that is them. That is all of these workers, these federally workers in particular. They receive no real help through the federal government, no real information. The money just goes wherever the money goes, and they can choose some funds, but they really don't get any type of education. And I'd say 9.5 out of 10 of them never do anything else. There's no diversification whatsoever. It just goes into that plan and that audit. They live within their means. They have a steady income. They're going to work long careers. But when they retire,
well, that's right. And then because they're not seeking counsel constantly, they either over value advice that's a bit, or they just won't go get advice, and quickly kind of the difference between the difference between informal and formal advice. Informal advice is everyone that tells you they're not paying you. That doesn't mean they're both equally valuable. So I'm not downplaying one value over the other. I'm just saying, if you're not paying for that advice, if it's YouTube, if it's us on this phone call, you're not paying for that advice. That's different advice than if you're getting formal advice where you're sitting down and actually paying for the advice. And one of the things that I tell people, that advisors hate this advice, but I tell even my clients that don't have all their money with me, when you're sitting down getting advice from a financial advisor, they're asking the questions, but remember, you're just equally in charge, right? It's your money. So don't be afraid to ask any question, right? I mean, any question that you want to ask. One of the questions that you for sure want to ask is, if you're investing $200,000 with a particular financial advisor, does that advisor have $200,000 in something like he or she's recommending? And if they don't use them, because now they're salespeople.
I was just going to say that's a very because they are. Then they're salespeople. But I think that's one of the main reasons people don't seek counsel too, is they're afraid of being sold something, and they don't.
That's right.
How to not be. They
Correct.
not be sold.
That's exactly right. And primarily because they just don't do it a lot, right? Like people, if you do something a lot, you just get really used to it, right? Like you and I, like we get sold all the time, so we're just like whatever. No, you know, we take the information in, but we don't have any ability. We're fine, no, or maybe, or yes, whatever we do, but we don't have that. But lots of people that haven't sat down with some, person who's really a trained salesperson that comes in and puts a good presentation on, et cetera. So, I mean, from a financial perspective, I definitely would never invest with someone that didn't have as much money as I have with them. I just wouldn't. They might not have the exact same investments that they're like my clients may not. I have different investments in some cases than that my clients will have, but that's only because I have a different risk tolerance, a different time frame, and a different goal, right? It's not because the investments, it has nothing to do with the, and but I'm happy to show them what I have, right? I'm like, well, yeah, and here's why I have this. Do you want that? You want that much risk? They'll say, no. Then I'm like, well, of course, because but somehow you have to kind of think of, and when you hear it on the news, or it's informal and formal, but you won't hear people use those words. But that's really what happens. Like when you're selling your insurance to clients, I tell clients, you can't, if you hear me like a cookout and I'm talking about buying and selling stock, I'm totally different than when you come into my office, right? You come into my office as a client, it's a much more formal. And I tell them that, right? Because I'm going to make sure I don't miss any dots. My job is to connect a bunch of dots and stuff like that. So I have to actually come at it a little bit differently than I can at a cookout talking about buying or selling a stock or gold or crypto or whatever.
Right. So a lot of the folks that I think that fall into that group 3, there's probably some in group 4 that find themselves in this way in some cases. I think the volatility of the market, and the volatility is really the fear. I'll call it volatility, but it's really the fear of investing, period, can certainly be a barrier as well. And once again, many of those times, I think it's because they haven't sought counsel.
That's right.
They understand how things work. I mean, it's amazing to me how many people don't actually realize how money really works to begin with, but it's not anything we were taught in school per se. People didn't really teach you how money works and those things and budgeting and all of that stuff. They might have taught it years ago, but they certainly hadn't taught it in the last number of years for any of that. Heck, my kids didn't even learn how to fill out a check in school, and we even learned some of that, which was kind of crazy, right? Some of these basic fundamental things you would think that would have been learned there. But that same survey I was talking about, or study I was talking about earlier, 57% of Americans believe that our economy is highly volatile right now, and stated that it had prevented many of them from investing or changing investments, which, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I've never heard anyone tell me that this is wrong. If you have a stock, in particular, we'll say a stock, and that stock goes down, you don't sell it, because the only way you lost money is if you sold it after it went down. you kind of got to wait for it to come back up. I mean, I know there's times when you cut your losses to a certain degree, but in general, long-term investing is going to be much better than short-term investing, which goes back to what you said earlier about it's a rare person that can day trade.
That's right. But here's the thing, and this book is free, so you can go to planassist.com. You can buy it on Amazon for $5, but you can also go to planassist.com and download it under the book piece for free. It costs nothing. But when I talk about the diversification, and again, people with money do what I'm talking about naturally. It's not like I'm opening what I'm saying. Everyone does it. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So rather they use the same words, I keep saying that, but what happens is people with money, well, they'll invest money based on time and purpose. So you're like, well, why aren't you worried about the market? Well, they don't have money based on the market because they have, okay, I have a now bucket, a soon bucket, a later bucket. So they know they have more than enough money to get through the next year. Their soon bucket's kind of the next 5 to 7 years. So think of that as conservative money, right? And then their later bucket is the money that's very volatile and going up and down. So if you looked at their portfolios, I can't tell you, Harlan, how many times I've sat down with someone that's not worked with me when I look at all their plannings in, they're already set up just like I said. Right? I'm like, and I'm like, well, who did this for you? And they're like, well, I didn't, or so and so did it years ago, or you know what I mean? They don't, but the money gets invested. That's the key, and that's how you take away that anxiety. But back to when you talk to someone who hasn't sat down with someone and really kind of learn the process, they think, okay, I have $400,000. And then, okay, I don't want to take the volatile risk, right? The volatility. Well, in reality, you probably want 200 of that 400 if you're retiring in the next, say, 8 or 9 years. 200 needs to be in that growth where it's going to have volatility. 150 probably needs to be something somewhere in the middle that keeps up with inflation, gets you 3, 4, 5%, but minimal risk. And then another, whatever, 50,000 needs to be in cash, right? So that you can kind of supplements your income when you retire or buy that car or whatever you're going to do. So, and I can lay this out again. It sounds crazy that I can do it in 50 pages, but it doesn't go into detail, but it gets you pointed in the right direction. So it doesn't kind of say, okay, here's how you should invest, put this much money in international, but it does give you kind of the big stuff and the concepts and the principles is maybe the best way to word it.
Okay. This is kind of a specific question, but I get this question a lot to me, and I try not to answer it. But if someone is getting a matching in their 401k, should they invest any more than the matching amount, or should they take that additional amount? You said 10% earlier. If your company's matching, say, 6%, should you put 10% in there, or should you take that other 4% as part of what you're diversifying?
Okay, here's the I'm going to answer this question, but the 3 biggest mistakes people make in that category 3. So if you find yourself in category 3, making money, and have some money, but you don't have wealth, right? Number 1 is living within your means. Most of those people already do that, but they have a budget. I make 5,000, I spend 4,500, That's perfect, right? The second thing, the biggest mistake they make is they don't max out the retirement accounts that are available to you. So if they say I'm going to match 6%, you sit down with someone, you say, how much you put in your 401k? They'll say 6% because I'm matching 6%, right? They can put $20,000 a year in a 401k, or roughly. They should be they should be coming as close to that number as you can. And then the third biggest mistake that they make is they think their house is an investment. And I can't tell you dozens and dozens of times I sit down with people, I put their plan together, I say your net worth is this, and they're like, that's completely wrong. You are incompetent. How did you miss that? And I said, what do you mean? What's wrong? And they're like, well, my house is worth $500,000. I said, you can't count your house as a retirement plan. That's an estate plan. When you die, we can count it, right? But you have to live someplace as long as you're alive. So you can't use your house as a retirement account. So that's those are the 3 mistakes: living within their means, max out your 401ks, retirement accounts, and number 3 is the house. So that's the long answer to yes. They should max out their 401ks.
Awesome. I mean, that's a great answer, because I actually haven't heard it explained that. In fact, I have quite honestly heard more people tell you shouldn't put more than that. That's where your money comes from, diversification. I have even seen some financial advisors that's where they find the money. Of course, they're probably selling stuff, right? Is what they're actually doing.
That is exactly what they're doing, because we get paid to invest money. So if you're putting more money in your 401k, 401ks are usually very cost effective. They're usually automatically diversified. They're usually the most cheapest way to invest money, right? Because they put a bunch of rules and laws and stuff in place. So now again, you and I are giving general advice. So if we sit down with someone individually, they need to go, and it may not be the case for every single person, obviously, right? Because of some special situation. But in general, max out, do as much as you can in your 401k or your retirement accounts as you can.
So I think that is good advice because of what you just said there too. Now, all 401ks are not the same. So
that's right.
But in general, a 401k is already going to have some diversification built into it if you take that opportunity. Now, there's also some of them that will certainly allow you to put all your money back into the company that is offering the 401k.
That's right.
And that, folks, is typically putting your eggs in one basket. That is not a good idea.
That's right.
Enron, anyone?
Exactly. And you're in Enron country. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I had, unfortunately, I had a number of people that, I lived in Houston and during Enron. So I have a number of people that lost everything, including a couple of people I knew that were retired that had to go back to work because they lost their entire retirement through that entire fiasco as well. So quite the crazy.
It's a bad story.
Yeah, it was a terrible story. You're right. Well, this has been extremely, not just entertaining, extremely important information. Tim, I'm very, very glad that you came on to share this. I really believe that most people that fall into that category 3 do not get the advice that they need because they're afraid of being sold. I personally believe that.
I agree with you. So do I.
The biggest problem they have, they don't know who to trust. They would rather just try to do it themselves or just do nothing. I'll just keep on putting the money in the 401k. I talked to the guy at ABC, or I talked to the guy, XYZ, and both of them said I should buy one of these. Man, I don't know. Then I read an article on Yahoo or on Google or whatever. It says, "Oh, you never put your money in that thing. You don't want that deal, right?" Or I was scrolling on Facebook and it said, "Never buy an annuity," or whatever. It doesn't make a difference. Whatever they see, all of a sudden it contradicts what somebody said, and they feel lost, and they feel like they were being sold, and so they take no action.
I 100% agree.
Not hurt their personal retirement, but it certainly not allowed any build generation.
That's right.
Any?
And pausing and doing nothing is not a good. People think that is a decision in and of itself, and it's usually not a good one.
Yeah, it is a decision. I mean,
yeah.
Like you're saying, it's generally not a good decision, but it is a decision.
Yeah, exactly.
You have come to a conclusion and you have made a decision.
That's right.
So, all right. Any additional tidbits you want to add today, buddy?
No, I thoroughly enjoyed it. You're a fantastic interview. I love how you just allow it to kind of not come real scripted and just allow the conversation to kind of go wherever it goes. And so I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And again, for anyone that's listening, it's not kind of this. I'll actually finish with the 2 philosophies I wrote the whole book on. Is the first philosophy is financial success is not some event. It's not hitting a lottery. It's not hitting the right stock. It's all your decisions over decades. So it's a combination of stuff. And then the other advice comes from Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger. And he said, so that someone asked him about, well, when you give people advice, what do they do? And he says, I can't help most people because they're not almost there. I can only help people who are almost there, right? And I even mentioned this in the book. Is when that's true with all of us, right? When we're almost there, and that's why so many good decisions you've made, you can't really link it to a person because you probably were almost there anyways, right? And then someone's just said, yes, that's the right answer. And then you go do it. You don't say, oh, because Joe said it or Tim said it or Harlon, whatever, right? Because you're already almost there. And so for those of you who are almost all are already there, that's really what Plan Assist is written for. You're not going to read it and find some new strategy you probably don't know or some aha moment. You're going to say, you know what? This is all stuff I've already probably heard, but I just hadn't implemented them.
Right, because now all of a sudden it's in a structured way where you like you say, and not in a it's not a 400-page novel. It is, a 50-page book that gives it to you, paints you a story of what it could look like for you by taking certain actions.
Exactly. And it is full of, though again, I'm biased to it, but it is exactly what I've seen with dozens and dozens of families and people with money. I mean, the principles and the layouts, pretty much what people do that have money. So,
yeah, and so folks, I want to point a couple of things out. If you don't take away anything else today, I want to point a couple of things out, and that is you should never stop seeking counsel. Just like saying goes, is never stop learning. Seeking counsel is part of learning. Hey, we all get advice. I think typically, in my experience, most of the best advice I have ever received was in an informal setting when we're just having conversations. But a lot of times that formal setting, that advice that you're getting when you're face-to-face in a business meeting, in a financial meeting, whatever you want to call it, that's what can tie all of that informal advice together. It can actually bring it together for you and say, you know what? I have heard these things for years. I so appreciate you bringing this together for me. Now, on the other side, if you're sitting there getting that professional advice and you feel like all you're doing is being sold, it's time to find somebody else to get that advice. Don't just give up. Don't just walk away. It's just like anything else. I mean, you interview for various different things. You interview to make sure you got the right doctor, to make sure you got the right lawyer and all these things. Your financial professional should be the same way. Go through the process and find the person that best matches with you, because not everyone is the same. And I promise, it's unfortunate, but it's true. I see it in my industry too. Not everyone has your best interest at heart. There are some really good people out there. There are some folks that absolutely 100% are on your side and have your best interest. Find that person that wants to work with you, and it will elevate you to places you can go.
Great ending, great summary.
Tim, once again, thank you so much for being with us. We sure appreciate it. Folks, thanks again for being with the Health and Wealth Power Hour. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget some of the other broadcasts that we have as well. Every month across multiple platforms, you can listen to our monthly live episode of Why Does Healthcare Suck? That's right. Why Does Healthcare Suck? Every month, we talk about different aspects of the healthcare system, help you avoid some of the crazy challenges and pitfalls of our healthcare system by giving you different advice from physicians and other people in that world to help you navigate it. Also have our weekly show called Kickstart. It happens every Monday, 10 a.m. Central Time. We update you on what's going on in the healthcare and health insurance industry. Appreciate you being with us this time. We'll catch you next time on the Health and Wealth Power Hour. We are out at you.